from Hollywood, I'm Martin Grove, welcoming you to our Screendollars podcast, Box Office Autopsy. Right now, we'll look at the movie marketplace and analyze how things are going and where they're going, sharing some opinions from my perspective after decades of talking about Hollywood on CNN Entertainment Tonight and as a Hollywood Reporter columnist. Younger Women drove Warner Brothers and New Line's psychological thriller Don't Worry, Darling to the top of this weekend's box office chart, with better ticket sales than analysts originally expected. Its success was fueled by Harry Styles' under-25 female fans, as well as by non-stop media coverage of the alleged spat during production between the film's director and star Olivia Wilde and star Florence Pugh, plus allegations that Chris Pine spat at Harry Styles after Darling's Venice Film Festival screening that drew a 7.5-minute standing ovation. On today's box office autopsy, we'll see how Darling did, and we'll also look at how Disney and 20th Century's theatrical reissue of James Cameron's 2009 classic Avatar opened. Later in our Oscar Outlook Spotlight, we'll focus on NBC's decision to air the 80th Golden Globes. And we'll talk about how Steven Spielberg's People's Choice win at Toronto for The Fabelmans boosts his Oscar prospects. But we start today atop the chart with Don't Worry, Darling, which is further proof that audiences are back in theaters. And we'd be seeing more people at the movies if the studios hadn't decided to mostly sit out the late summer and early fall weekends. Here's a quick preview of Darling to help you decide if you want to see it or skip it.
I have it.
Focus, right here.
Have a little drink.
Yeah, I will.
You and me.
Always. You and me.
Darling,
All of you wives,
I'm with you all the time.
we men, we ask a lot.
Can't you see?
We ask for strength,
I want to be
food at home, a house cleaned,
with you all the time.
and discretion above all else.
Boys and their toys. At least we know they're getting work done.
Welcome to the Victory Project.
We're all here because we believe in the mission.
What are we doing?
Changing the world.
What are we doing?
Changing the world.
That's right.
What do you think they're really doing out there?
What do you mean? The one thing they ask of us is to stay here. Where it's safe.
Darling arrived to $19.2 million at 4,113 theaters, which was better than Hollywood handicappers originally expected, but less than revised estimates early this weekend when the $15 to $18 million launch that analysts first had in mind was upgraded to an overly enthusiastic $20 to $25 million. Then $21 million emerged as the most likely opening number. Warner Brothers was always expecting $17 million. Exhibitors were thinking 18 to 20, so the opening hit their midpoint. Darling, which reportedly cost $35 million to produce, also did $10.8 million internationally per ComScore, making its worldwide total $30 million. As for the critics, they hate Darling with 38% on Rotten Tomatoes, but RT's audience score is 80%, indicating the film's generating decent word of mouth. Darling wasn't showing sexy tracking scores. The only demo really excited to see it were under 25 women, whose first choice scores were in double digits with 7 points over norm. It's a safe bet these are Harry Styles fans, and to paraphrase the 1921 Broadway show tune, they're just wild about Harry. All other demos were below norm for first choice. Adult women were 1 point under norm, younger men were 4 points under norm, and adult men were 5 points under norm. Although some analysts are saying the media coverage of Darling's many controversies helped by creating awareness of the film, the tracking shows this wasn't the case. Its average total awareness opening day was 10 points below norm. Younger women were the only demo with total awareness scores over norm, and they were just 3 points above. Disney and 20th Century's re-release of James Cameron's Avatar opened third to an overperforming $10 million at 1,860 locations. It wasn't on the tracking, which didn't help media pundits' predictions. The early buzz was for 10 to 12 million, but closer to opening, that got chopped way back to $5 to $7 million. Exhibitors were at the low end of that range with $5 million. In its original release, Avatar did $760.5 million domestic and $2.85 billion worldwide, making it the all-time top-grossing movie globally. Avatar also grossed $20.5 million internationally this weekend per ComScore, giving the reissue a worldwide cum of $30.5 million. So many moviegoers have already seen the 2009 blockbuster in theaters or home entertainment that the reissue's best selling point was to be able to see it in IMAX or 3D with laser projection and state-of-the-art sound. Critics on RT are 82%, and audiences are also 82%. Actually, re-releasing Avatar was a great marketing idea by Disney and 20th to start getting moviegoers ready for Cameron's sequel, Avatar: The Way of Water, opening December 16th in IMAX and 3D. Short scenes from the sequel are included at the end of the reissue prints, giving audiences a first look at what's ahead. The reissue's overperforming debut augurs very well for the sequel. Here's Cameron with some thoughts about the re-release.
Well, when Avatar first came out, people didn't really know what to expect. And when they walked into a movie theater, they sat down and they saw a film that was authored to take advantage of the big screen, the giant screen in the case of IMAX, the 3D, which was fairly new at that time. I think Avatar was the first really big movie in 3D, and so it took them on an experience that they weren't expecting. They were positively surprised. There was no way we could sort of tell people in advance in a 30-second TV spot what was cool about this movie. You just had to sit down and start watching it. Then on top of that, I worked with some of the best design artists in the world to create that world and all the creatures in it, and this beautiful rainforest and all this heavy hardware that came with the humans and so on from Earth. And it was a bit of a visual pageant. And thirdly, I think that they responded to the love story, to the emotions of the film. So it kind of hit on all cylinders of beauty, of wonder, of epic action, and with real emotion. Well, here's the interesting thing: is there's if you're under sort of 22 years old ish, you probably almost certainly didn't see Avatar in a movie theater. So if you're a fan of a movie that you've seen, at home on TV or on a laptop or some device. So you really haven't seen the movie. So you kind of get to watch it for the first time all over again with all of that dimensionality, literally and figuratively, that you don't experience unless you go to the cinema. And ideally go to, a high-end cinema that's got the good 3D and the laser projection if it's available in your area or whatever. And you'll experience a version of the film that it's pretty hard to imagine just watching it on a 2D television set. So I think all of the things that worked the first time when the film came out and was this phenomenal hit are going to work again, especially for a young audience that has never seen it in a theater. And even if you saw it in a theater back then, if you're in your 20s, 30s, whatever, you're going to see it at a level beyond what you experienced then, because projectors are brighter. We have laser projection now. We remastered the film in 4K, so it's clearer. We've done parts of it at high frame rates to smooth out the 3D, so there's no kind of little bits of strobing or anything like that. So it's better 3D. The colors are beautiful. It's 4K, it's high dynamic range. It's remastered in Atmos 9.1 sound, so it looks better, it sounds better. So even if you saw it before, it's worth seeing it again at this point.
Meanwhile, wouldn't it be nice to be able to wave a magic wand and turn the distribution pipeline back on? Well, we can't quite do that, but we can conjure up a quick preview of a Disney sequel that would have been perfect to make families appear in theaters next weekend. But instead, it will only be streaming on Disney+. Here's a taste of Hocus Pocus 2 to help you decide if you want to see it at home, or if you're not a subscriber, visit a friend who is.
I banish thee from Salem forever.
They were right to fear thee. Magic has a way of uniting. Happy 16th birthday, child.
I have a gift for my favorite customers. Legend has it, it's on the 16th birthday that a witch gets her powers.
Yes, Salem, we're back! Gilbert, where did you get that candle? We have to get out of here. The witches will be here any second. Ah! The book is alive.
He woke up?
If we intend to live past sunrise, we have to steal their souls.
Whoa, wait, can we talk about this?
No. We must fly! Not to freak out. The provincial maniac obsessed with getting revenge on Salem sounds very bad for Salem.
We should get some salt. Why? So it tastes better when they eat us? Spread out.
That's not 6 feet under.
Stop! I am a good zombie!
HP2 brings back the Sanderson sister witches from the first Hocus Pocus, Bette Midler, Kathy Najimy, and Sarah Jessica Parker. The original, which reportedly cost $28 million to produce, opened to $8.1 million in theaters July 16, 1993, and did $45.4 million worldwide. In the sequel, the sisters are accidentally returned to today's Salem, after which they somehow must be stopped from wreaking havoc on the world. What will be playing in theaters next weekend is definitely not targeted to families. Of course, there's another R-rated horror thriller, Paramount's Smile, where a doctor, after a terrifying occurrence with a patient, starts experiencing frightening incidents, and to survive must escape her horrifying new reality. Hollywood handicappers are bullish on Smile, with an early projection of $18 to $20 million at about 3,500 theaters. Also hitting theaters next weekend is Universal's R-rated rom-com Bros. Directed by Nicholas Stoller, who directed Storks. Its producers include Judd Apatow, whose many credits include writing, directing, and co-producing the 2005 hit rom-com The 40-Year-Old Virgin. Bros stars Billy Eichner, co-writer with Stoller of the screenplay, and Luke McFarlane as two very busy guys with commitment problems who nonetheless attempt a relationship. The early morning line from media pundits is for $7 to $9 million at about 3,000 cinemas. What could help is its 94% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. The event films moviegoers really want to see are still off in the future, but at least we've gotten through the worst of the studio's slowdown season. Warner Brothers and DC's Black Adam is the film that should kickstart the fall box office recovery. Tracking already shows Adam, which opens October 21st, with huge want-to-see interest. The average definite interest 4 weeks out is 13 points over norm. Its best demo is Older Men, who are 23 points over norm. Younger Men are next best with 15 points over norm. Those scores should keep growing over the next month and translate into the kind of ticket sales we were seeing in the early and midsummer weekends. As we roll through the remaining fall weekends, we'll wind up, before we know it, in the thick of the award season. So let's fire up our Oscar Outlook spotlight and try to make sense of the latest Golden Globes news. Which is that NBC's bringing the Globes back, but not necessarily back to life. The network's decision to telecast the 80th Globes next January 10th is great news for the HFPA and its new management team, but it also raises questions because NBC hasn't said what happens after 2023. It's also unclear if NBC's paying the same $60 million fee for the 80th Globes that it reportedly paid in the past. NBC, of course, doesn't control whether the 100-plus publicity firms that originally knocked the HFPA for a loop with complaints about poor diversification, bad behavior by members, and allegations of past financial improprieties will now play ball. Some reports say there are PR firms willing to cooperate now because they can get bonus payments from the clients they help win Globes. We don't know yet how many PR shops will return or how much star power they represent. The HFPA needs robust support from publicists and studios to get enough bold-faced names to fill a red-hot carpet and to make the Beverly Hilton's ballroom glitter. Without those familiar faces, it's just the Golden Ghosts. The show also needs an A-list host who's willing to work for the HFPA, and there's not much time left to find one. The timetable for nominations is even tighter. The deadline is November 7th for motion picture and TV submissions, and noms will be announced December 12th, which is, by the way, perfect timing for these studios to market their holiday films as Globes nominees. One of the films likely to turn up on most nomination lists this season is Universal and Amblin Entertainment's The Fabelmans, Steven Spielberg's semi-autobiographical drama about his own childhood years in Arizona. Fabelmans just won the People's Choice Award at TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, and that immediately boosted its prospects for Best Picture and Directing noms from the Globes and the Oscars, and most everything else in between. Here's Spielberg talking about Fabelmans at Toronto.
Excited and nervous, This is my first film festival with an official entry. I did, I think in '82 we debuted E.T. at Cannes, and then the last Indiana Jones film was debuted at Cannes also. But as exhibitional screenings, this is the first time I've ever really entered one of my films into a legitimate film festival. I've always found ways of putting, my personal life in everything I've done, even, Indiana Jones, believe it or not. There's pieces of me in that and pieces of me in everything I've really directed. But this was a very focused, intentional story of coming of age. And I've never made a coming of age story before, told one before, and I've never told one so close to my own experiences and so close to my own heart. Only the names were changed to protect the innocent. The most challenging part was finding the cast that best represents my family. There's nothing more personal than that, in casting your own family. And I didn't have to look very far. I felt in my heart for a long time that Michelle Williams was very representative of my experience with my own mom. Well, everybody knows I don't see my movies with audiences rarely. I mean, so I'm going to just literally do Destry, my daughter said, I think you take a deep breath for 4 seconds and hold it, then you let it out for 8 seconds. I'll be doing a lot of that tonight. 4 in, 8 out.
Fabelmans will also be in the media spotlight November 6th as the closing night selection at Hollywood's 36th AFI Fest. Fabelmans opens November 11th with exclusive runs in New York and LA and widens November 23rd for Thanksgiving. Toronto audiences have voted online since 1978 for the PCA, which is now an Oscar bellwether after leading to Best Picture winners like 12 Years a Slave, Green Book, The King's Speech, Nomadland, and Slumdog Millionaire. Some PCA winners that got Best Picture nods but didn't win the Oscar include last year's Belfast, La La Land, Room, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. It's good news for Fabelmans that NBC will telecast the 80th Globes. With its Toronto victory and the media coverage to follow at AFI Fest, Fabelmans will definitely get HFPA attention on its way to the Oscars. Spielberg's Great Globes track record, just going back to 1999, includes wins for West Side Story, 2022's Best Musical or Comedy, plus a directing nod, 2008's Cecil B. DeMille Award, and Saving Private Ryan, 1999's Best Drama and Directing winner. Spielberg also had directing noms for AI, Artificial Intelligence, Lincoln plus a Best Drama nom, Munich, and The Post plus a Best Drama nom. In other words, Spielberg could say about the Globes, "You like me, you really like me." Well, we hope you like today's box office autopsy and will return next week when we check out the openings of Smile and Bros and keep an eye, as usual, on the latest awards activity in our Oscar Outlook Spotlight. So please join us again then, and thanks very much for listening. Time now for our film flashback look at what was happening in Hollywood right around now, way back then. Let's set today's time travel dial for September 22nd, 1995. In a world where online porn is available 24/7, it's hard to believe that erotic movies like Showgirls once drew audiences to theaters. Years earlier, X-rated films like 1972's Deep Throat were made on shoestring budgets and did very well theatrically because that was the only way to see such movies. By the time Showgirls opened September 22nd, 1995, from United Artists and Carolco Pictures, the goal was to take NC-17 rated sex to new artistic levels. Director Paul Verhoeven and screenwriter Joe Eszterhas had scored big with their 1992 erotic thriller Basic Instinct, made for about $49 million. Basic did nearly $118 million domestic and about $353 million worldwide. They hoped Box Office Lightning would strike again with Showgirls, which cost about $45 million. It opened, however, to $8.1 million at just 1,388 theaters and wound up with $20.4 million. A key problem was not being able to book enough theaters, since multiplexes in shopping malls had leasing contracts that prohibited them from showing NC-17 or even unrated movies. Eszterhas came up with the idea for Showgirls while vacationing at his home in Maui. In classic Hollywood style, he scribbled it on a napkin. He had no trouble getting a $2 million advance to write the screenplay, and got another $1.7 million when the project was green-lighted. Verhoeven had passed on Showgirls because he didn't like Eszterhas's script and wanted to do an action-adventure about the Crusades starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. That project was scrapped because Carolco couldn't afford to finance both Crusade and the action-adventure Cutthroat Island from director Rennie Harlin, who had directed Cliffhanger. Carolco had already put $10 million into developing Crusade, and Eszterhas had been given nearly $4 million for Showgirls. Verhoeven knew Carolco, with whom he'd made Basic Instinct, was now facing bankruptcy. By agreeing to direct Showgirls, he saved the day. Verhoeven's deal let him deliver a movie that would start out as an NC-17. That rating had previously only resulted after screenings for the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, made it unavoidable. In exchange for creative control, Verhoeven gave up 70% of his $6 million fee and would only get his remaining 30% if the film succeeded. Fortunately for Verhoeven, despite tanking theatrically, Showgirls became a huge hit thanks to home video, where NC-17 was a big selling point. It did over $100 million in VHS rentals, making it one of MGM UA Home Entertainment's all-time video bestsellers. Ironically, that wouldn't have happened if Warner Home Video, then the distributor for MGM UA's tapes, hadn't passed on the controversial Showgirls. That left video distribution and later DVD and Blu-ray with MGM UA, which happily raked in all those unexpected riches. And that's it for today's podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with another box office autopsy next week. In Hollywood for Screendollars, I'm Martin Grove.